you did first thing. Yeah.
Great. There we go. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Terry Emond, and I am the President and CEO of the Lupus Foundation of America, Georgia chapter. And we are here tonight to present the second part in our digital advocacy series. And we are really proud of the work that we're doing here because, we used to go down to the Capitol every year, 120, 200 strong, and we haven't been able to do that for 3 years now. So we are proud that we've been able to bring this series together and still present you with important information about what's going on in the world of advocacy and what's happening at the Capitol and what we can do to keep our advocacy efforts up, even though we're in a virtual environment still at some levels. So I would like tonight we're going to talk about building relationships. And we have a very special presenter here with us tonight. And I just want to tell you a little bit about her before I get started. So let me just advance. I'm talking to myself, y'all. So we have to keep the fun in this, right? What we're doing. So our presenter tonight is Dorothy Leone Glasser, and she has lived with lupus for over 45 years. And as a result, she's overcome 2 different kinds of cancer: disabling arthritis, kidney failure, seizures, coma, a heart attack, and strokes. During this time, she graduated from a wheelchair to crutches to ultimately walking with her own 2 feet. Between the ages of 20 and 37, Dorothy received 3 death sentences imposed by her doctors. From receiving the National Arthritis Foundation Hero Award to her advocacy initiatives, she is alive and paving the way for the future of wellness as executive director of the Advocates for Responsible Care, a nonprofit wellness and advocacy organization whose mission is to help and empower individuals to achieve their maximum wellness with a strong voice as health advocates. This is important, a strong voice. And this is what it is. It's about patient voices, and Dorothy's going to talk about it tonight. Effectively reducing cultural incompetency and healthcare delivery and disparities. Dorothy, you've got a lot in your bio here, and I'm going to actually post a link to it in our chat so that people can read it. You just have an amazing legacy. But before we go on, I just want to tell a real quick story, and I know you know what story I'm going to tell. I had a woman come in who's been volunteering with the foundation since 2008. And she came in a few years ago and she brought a newspaper in. I guess she'd been going through some things. And she said, Terry, I've been carrying this around since the 80s. And she said, because when I was diagnosed with lupus, I didn't know anybody who had lupus. And I looked down and there it was, an article about Dorothy Leone Glasser. And this woman held on to it forever and ever, because that was her lifeline, that there was somebody who could get in the newspaper. You made lupus so important that you were advocating for people. Well, a few months ago, Dorothy was doing a program and she asked me to connect her with a couple of our virtual support group leaders. And lo and behold, the woman who had carried that newspaper around was the same woman who was our virtual support group leader now. So she went from not knowing anybody with lupus to being empowered by what Dorothy had done to becoming a support group leader and advocate in her own way. So we're all in this together. And without further ado, I would like to introduce the amazing Dorothy Leone Glasser. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Terry. It's an honor to be invited tonight, and it has been an honor and a pleasure to know you all these years and to work with you. The Lupus Foundation is a great organization, and when Terry took the helm, it really became even greater. And we appreciate you and all the work that you do. We're just going to talk a little bit tonight about being the best advocate that you can be, and those pesky relationships with our legislators that we need to cultivate in order to be effective. So if you just go to the next slide.
Sure.
I just have a few slides here for you to just see a little bit. This is what Terry just told you about who we are and why we do this. And for all of you on this call, just realize the story is the most precious jewel that you have. Your own personal story and relationship with lupus is what is going to be your foundation for being a great advocate. Next slide. Terry. So the advocacy group is always the loud voice among millions, and we're all here to articulate the same vision to society. And it can be any chronic illness, any illness that people are dealing with on a daily basis in their lives. That's so important that we all come together to be able to lift up our voices. Next slide. So I just wanted you to be aware as I talk tonight about 3 components that I feel are most important about advocacy. The first one is knowledgeable sophistication. And that means that you are aware of the process of advocacy as much as you are about the issue that you're advocating for. So I'm a big proponent of teaching people about how do things work under the Georgia Dome? How does a bill become a law? How many votes do you need? Why does it go to so many committees? Learning the process as you go through this is very, very important. And it's important in your relationship with legislators so that you understand what they need at that time. The second unique component is star advocates. All of you on this call tonight are star advocates. If you have a story about being connected to lupus, whether you are a caregiver, whether it's a friend or a loved one, or whether you yourself are suffering from the disease, you are a star. And your story is what's most important to us. And then the integral networking, and that's networking with other organizations that feel the same way that you do, as well as working with our legislators, elected officials, and even our business and university communities. It's imperative that we bring as many stakeholders to the table as possible on any issue. Next slide. This is just a picture of our RxReach Georgia Coalition. I started this coalition in 2012, and we now have 41 medical and chronic disease organizations connected to this coalition. And this is the force behind us moving all policy and legislation under the Georgia Dome. It's also the force on the federal level for us to address many of those issues as well that affect patients and patient care. Next slide. So I want to tell you that this is your show, and I want everyone to act the part and look like you know what's important and how this illness has affected you, and what do you want to be able to get across to people. Next slide. Oh, there might be somebody here you all recognize from lupus. This is just some of the events that we do, and how we always have legislators at our last event that we were able to do on the Capitol. I think I ordered 200 lunches, and we had over 130 legislators come by and sit and have lunch with us. We have been working, as I said, under the dome for a long time. And my goal from the beginning was that when someone mentions RxReach Coalition, that the legislator would know who they're talking about. And we got together for this event because we had just passed step therapy legislation in Georgia. Next slide. Star advocates are those who have a compelling personal reason for their involvement in the mission. And our new tagline for this year, and some of your great leaders here are going to be part of a panel that I'm going to be doing in August on patient advocacy. We have a new tagline that says, patients are the face of policy. Because the one thing that I know after all these years working under the dome and passing legislation is that our legislators listen to patients' stories. And they are very moved when I bring patients and families before them who are directly connected to the issue. They're critical to our legislators accepting even the issue that we're putting before them. And we include in all of our communications and our connections with legislators are medical bodies that stand behind us in support. They don't do patient advocacy. They leave that to us. So in this case with lupus, the American College of Rheumatology, for instance, the Medical Association of Georgia, they're all members on the RxReach coalition because it's very important to bring in the medical community since this is chronic illness and to get their buy-in. So when we're negotiating the language of bills, I have to make sure that they see what we're negotiating because we want their input on it also. We always want the docs' support. Next slide. This is a very famous quote that I have lived by. Always make your friends before you need them. And what we tend to do, and this is just human nature, we all gravitate towards people that think like us and feel like us. And the one thing I want all of you to realize in advocacy, it is more important that you step across to the other side and engage with people who don't think like you, who don't feel the way you feel, and maybe who just aren't as interested in the issue that you're interested in, because you have to win them over. We have a legislative body at the General Assembly that's ruled by one party. And because they are leadership, it's very important that we have leadership engaged in anything we want to do under the dome. I would love to just be able to go to the Kim Schofields of the world who get this because she has lived with this her whole life and who understand how important it is to pass bills that give affordable access to medications and treatments to patients in Georgia. For Kim, it's a no-brainer. For a lot of my legislative friends, it's easy to work with. But my job is to go to the people who don't particularly want to allocate the money to get this done. So it's part of being a good advocate that you put the politics aside because they'll want to bring you into their politics. You have to be able to put the politics aside and stay at the human level of how this is affecting people. And of course, there's a price tag attached to every bill, how this economically is draining Georgia. Next slide. So here's an example of me working with the Republicans as well as Democrats for us to pass the hate crimes bill. I also have a coalition that is for sensible gun policy in Georgia and safety in communities. So we also are under the dome working with legislators for those issues as well. And we were able to get leadership to want to do two things in the last 3 years, which is reform the hate crimes bill in Georgia, which has led to some wonderful things happening here that would have been overlooked and justice would not have been served, and also to reform the citizens arrest law. Next slide. So through this process of relationship with our partners, we can really stand strong and united. And that's always the goal of a coalition or a foundation. You know, we want to bring in as much support as possible because that's what's going to impress our policymakers, and have a broad support base that's well-informed, receptive in the community as well as in the mission. In the last 3 years, I've become very engaged with faith and public life, because what I realize is that also in the faith community, we have a lot of leaders who struggle to help get prescription drugs and medical treatment for their members. So we have been partnering with them on a lot of our issues just to be able to say we also have their support. Next slide. So how do you get to develop this relationship with legislators? One of the first things to do is look them up. read their bio, find out what their occupation was, what their interest is. And when you're having your next event, be sure to invite them. We invite everybody to our events. Everyone doesn't always show up, but we certainly always have legislators that are keynote speakers at all our events. It helps build those relationships. And of course, within your group, whether it be your advocacy group or within the foundation itself, it's very important to find members that are that particular legislator's constituency, so that they know that there's a vote connected to what they're going to say and what stand they're going to take on an issue, because that is also what moves them. Next slide. So when seeing your legislators or connecting with them, it's hard to be in person now, so a lot of it is done through email. So we email action alerts. I have a whole list of when Terry gets the coalition action alerts, it's going out to probably 30 to 50 legislators as well. People who we have partnered with or we have been before to give testimony under the dome, or just in the community, people who are elected officials. We include commissioners. We start at the community level. So your elected officials on that lower community level are very important, because this is their neighborhoods and they're more vested in their communities. And then we just go up till we get to senators. And ARXE also, as I said, does a lot of work on the federal level as well. So our federal legislators are getting our action alerts that we do here in Georgia, because they represent the people in Georgia. So I want them to know the RxReach coalition is working on this, so that they are aware to give us their support as well. The other thing I will say is that what is even more important than the legislator is to get to know their staff. Because when the staff knows you, you have a much better chance of seeing that legislator, rather than trying to run down the hallway and catch them for a 2-second talk. So the staff receives all of our alerts as well. The staff is also invited. And it's many times a staff person that I will go to first and say, I really need to speak to Representative or Senator so-and-so. Can you get me 5 minutes of their time? I can call them, whatever it is. And to thank them. You know, it's not easy on their end, no matter what side of the aisle they're on, but it's our job to make them most interested in us and the issues that we are bringing before them. Next slide, please. So think about legislators at your next great event. I know that we do the lupus walk every year. You know, that's a great place to invite your legislators and have them come to get to know you. And it's a lot less pressure for them, because it's an easier event. And also anytime that, you know, you are mentioned, or somebody does an article on the foundation or on a support group, make sure that you mention your legislators who have been helpful to you. They love that. They live for the spotlight and for the media and the press, because that's what makes them well known. So it's really important that we highlight them at any chance that we get. Next slide. Just a little bit of a warning here for everyone who maybe is new to advocacy and doesn't realize, some of us will make this sound easy. It's not, and it's not for everybody. What I do with my volunteer army is that I have some volunteers who are just great on the phone. They're great just picking up the phone when we're down to the wire on a bill and calling the legislators I ask them to call and just say why they're in support of a particular legislation. Others are very good to actually go to the Capitol and meet with their representatives and their senators and be able to have the same message as talking points. So everybody is going to find their niche in advocacy, and we embrace all of it. All of it is important to us, because you can't get the job done There are some times when I've had to be here at the phone lines while somebody else was down at the Capitol doing the face-to-face work, because this is way it's like a double punch. And then if you can get the press involved in the issue as well, now you're really making some news. So it's just important to understand that this could be very time consuming. We have been trying, for instance, to get manufacturers' rebates back to patients for the last 5 years. So for 5 years, in the 11th hour, we've been told, no, we're not going to pass that bill. We're not going to do it this session. And, you know, I can go on and on as to the reasons. It's not my job to beat up the legislators. It's my job to just tell you that you don't quit. It's just like what you do in dealing with this disease every day. You don't quit no matter what happens to you. And it is the same thing in advocacy. You understand that there are times that they're just going to say no. I had no good reason. We went before subcommittees. Everyone thought was great. I spoke to all the legislators afterwards on the committees, but leadership at the last minute said no. And I know when leadership said no, that it meant it was not happening this session. And sometimes that'll just happen to you. You have to remain optimistic. You have to do your debriefing with your groups. And then you have to look ahead. How am I going to change this strategic plan? And my plan for the legislators that told me no is to go to them first next session and say, I'm back again with rebates legislation. Tell me what we need to do to make this happen. And that's really the best way to look at it. You will have victories and you will have defeats, and it's all a learning process. Next slide, please. So I encourage everyone who's not familiar with advocacy to think about the small campaigns and what you could do on a small scale first and win some of those, or be successful at doing some of that before you go on to the larger campaigns. But again, it's why partnerships and relationships are so important, because when you're smaller or not as active, if you partner with other groups who think the same way, now there's a louder voice, because look how many you are. I always remind the legislators, and I always give them the roster with all the logos of everyone connected to the coalition. But at the end, I tell them, please look at the bottom of your folder, because you will see the list of our coalition members. And realize behind each organization is thousands of members. So now when we're talking, we could be talking for like 300,000 people when we go before the legislators as a coalition. That's impressive to them. So they know they can't ignore us. Next slide, please. So this is where the friendships and the alliances are made when you're on the battleground. So winning those small battles or losing those small battles actually helps solidify relationships and alliances. And that's always helpful in waging a larger campaign. I was asked 2 years ago to be the chair of the Patient Advocacy Alliance for Georgia Bio. And I took it because 2 reasons. It's about time that industry had us at the table, because after all, why are you creating all of these cutting edge treatments and medications? Oh, it's for us. We're the patients. So we should be at that table. And secondly, I knew it was an opportunity to now go under the dome with important legislation and have this group there with us. And that's exactly what has happened, is that now we are even larger, because now we have the biggest, one of the biggest economic foundations in Georgia, which is Georgia Bio, now standing with us. And that makes a difference also. Next slide. This was taken 3 years ago. We had a Capitol Day, and we were definitely pushing step therapy legislation. And all of our female representatives were together, that they were coming in for the lunch. And I said, can we just go on the steps and take a picture together? So it's these types of photos, putting them on your website, which is important because it expands you beyond being just a chronic illness foundation. It says you're also active in making a change, because together, that's what happens. Individually, we can make a difference in people's lives and in our own, but together we make a change for all of Georgia. Next slide, please. So I have a whole manual. It's called Advocacy Mission Possible. And I have much more material, but it's really just a breakdown of the most effective advocacy tools that can mobilize ordinary people like all of us to wind up doing extraordinary things in advocacy. Next slide, please. And this is one of the, 2004, I did a rollout of the Patient Prescription Assistance Program in North and South Carolina and Georgia. And because of our success with moving that, I was asked to be on the stage with GW. And at the time, Sonny Perdue was our governor. It was a very freaky type of situation there, but I did get to spend 2 hours with the presidents in the green room, which was very interesting. But most importantly, it was about just saying how Part D and doing, and having prescription drug programs was going to help the people of Georgia. Next slide. Yeah. This is when we had step therapy, and the governor signed the bill, and he signed it at the cancer centers, cancer treatment centers. So we all went down there for the bill signing, and these are some of the fabulous people on the coalition, as well as some of our farmer friends who supported our work and what we were trying to do. And step therapy also took 3 years, a little more than 3.5 years to get passed here in Georgia. And part of the problem sometimes on the national level, you might have other people from your organization when you have a hot bill going on down here that want to come down and they think they're going to help you and they want you to use their model language. And it was a great strain to get them to understand Georgia doesn't do your model language. Our legislators have their own language that they like. And because of that, it was a lot of people coming behind us to try to change the bill. And it had a very bumpy ride because of that. But finally, in fact, one of the main sponsors of the legislation said, we're letting the coalition work with us on this and we're taking them as the lead. So it eliminated all the other people who thought they could have a piece of this because they all wanted to go back and say, hey, we helped pass step therapy in Georgia. Well, that's very nice, but it's different when we need your help. But if you're just making it harder for us, please let us do what we need to do. It's our environment, it's our territory, and we know it best. We spend a lot of time getting to know it. Next slide. So this is what I want to leave you with. Your strength always lies in your spirit. Remember, your illness plays out in your body. You keep it alive in your mind, but it comes to a place of peace and rest in your spirit. So we're always looking to strengthen our spirits first. This will empower advocates to put a call to action. It begins with you, and it's heard in one loud collective voice. So I just thank you for this opportunity. I want to take your questions, and I want to help you go out there and make advocacy a mission possible.
Thank you, Dorothy. I certainly appreciate your presentation. Learned a lot from you and would love to take this time just to allow some of our members, some of our audience to ask specific questions of you. So if you're in the audience and you have questions for our speaker, post them in the chat, and then Alita and I will go through and we'll answer those questions for you. And while you do that, I'll go ahead and ask a few questions. So Dorothy, given that today was an election day, and many of our members of our both state and national offices are running for office, how should we best use our time in trying to build relationships in the middle of an election year?
One of the ways that I think is very powerful, I know that we're live right now on Facebook, use the social media platforms. Most of you are much more proficient than Terry and I are at this. So I encourage you to please use your social media platforms to thank your legislators, your own congressman, your own senator on the federal level, and then your representatives and state senators. Remember, all politics are local. So you want to start with your state people, and you want to thank them on Facebook for, especially at this time when it's an election, when it's a primary. And just tell them that we appreciate what you do for Georgia. You don't have to be political at all. You don't have to mention anything at all other than we appreciate your service to the people of Georgia and your position on healthcare, or helping us to improve healthcare for all Georgians. I think I wrote about Nakima was on today on MSNBC, who was a friend of mine, I must admit, before she took her positions. But that's all I put on there. I put a picture of her and I said, thank you for always trying to make Georgia better. And they will respond and they will get to know who you are. And I noticed like Christopher has his title on most things as well, like a support leader. That's very good. You can put that when you're thanking them on Facebook. Tell them who you are, who you're connected to. And that's the other thing when you're advocating. You want to make sure that it is the message that your leadership is giving you that you're always saying, so that everybody is on the same page. And then you want to make sure that you recognize them, that you give this organization, the Lupus Foundation of America, Georgia, the credit that it deserves, because you're only standing there as an advocate because of them, because they've opened that door for you. So that's really, really important. Did that answer your question?
That did. Thank you. Thank you very much. I was curious, you mentioned, just as a follow-up to that question, you mentioned really trying to start on a local level with maybe county officials, your mayors. We for years, we used to go as a chapter, we would participate in county commission meetings and city hall meetings pretty regularly, and we would get proclamations from the various agencies. But I've always been curious, like, what ways does county play a role in our health, or in the issues that are important to us?
You know, one of the things that we don't realize is sometimes certain counties, I can remember a few years ago in DeKalb County, Councilman Larry Johnson, who we've known for years, who helped us with another crisis that was here in Georgia many years ago. He had these discount prescription cards issued, and it was available if you lived in DeKalb County. So sometimes you don't even realize what's coming before them. And if you don't know, you don't always have to show up at the meetings. What I always found is very important is connecting with these people when you don't have an ask. Because you got to go to them when you do have an ask. But you want to be able to connect with them when you don't, and just tell them, thank you. Thank you for being there. One of the other issues that's a big barrier to a lot of people is transportation to get to and from their healthcare visits. That's done with your county. So there's so many ways. You know, on our coalition, we have a teachers group on our coalition because we felt it was really important that they have a voice, and they're very influential. Education is one of the ways where advocacy travels. Now the internet in this day and age has surpassed everything, but it was usually television, media, education, and in your church. That's where the message could be spread. So I'm only practicing what I'm preaching. I went to connect with Faith in Public Life. I connect on the local level with our county people. And I also connect then, of course, at the state level. The other thing is to realize a lot of our elected officials were first county commissioners. And I can name you 5 that I know who now are representatives and senators, but they started out as county commissioners. So it's really important to make that connection. And whatever county you live in, whoever your mayor is, just send them an email. Again, putting Lupus Foundation at the bottom, you could say volunteer advocate, and just thanking them. Thank you for being here for us. And I look forward to talking to you soon or connecting to your office. Just let them know that you're out there.
That's some great points. Very, very good points. I started to realize that all of these elected officials, many of them are looking for their next step. And it's important to keep those relationships. It was interesting just looking at the ballots today and seeing how many people I knew who on a county level or on a local level who are now running for state office. So
yes,
great point.
Yeah.
I will read to you. We have 2 messages in the chat,
Okay.
which are more comments than questions, but Tanazia, I believe is how she pronounces her name, says she did not know we were advocating and how we needed to communicate a little bit more. She wants to know, how can I communicate with my legislators? How can I stay up to date with events besides the walk? And I'm probably misquoting her statement a little bit. But you did mention, are there any specific websites that we should go to specifically find out information about our elected officials?
All of your elected officials, mostly all of them, certainly the representatives, have newsletters. So sign on to your representative's newsletter, and it will present itself with a channel to communicate with them. If you read something in their newsletter, during session particularly, they're putting out their newsletters every week, and it'll allow you to then comment to them or say, this issue is very important. I'm a volunteer with the Lupus Foundation. This is an issue that's important to us. And then when you need help or you have a question for them, that also opens up that channel.
Oh, okay.
Nazia, did you have a follow-up?
No, she just answered everything that I needed to know. And thank you again. And my name, it pronounces Tanasia.
Tanasia.
Tanasia, what a beautiful name. Well, thank
That
you,
is a beautiful
Tanasia. If you need any help, I think my email address was on the opening slide. It's very simple, dlg@arxc.org, and maybe Christopher can put that in the chat. If any of
sure
you
can.
need any help, don't hesitate to reach out. That's what I'm here for. It's been my life mission to help other people become effective advocates. And we all start with ourselves.
Thank you again, Ms. Dorothy. Oh, I did want to ask about the self-therapy. When do you guys host that again, or just for yourself personally?
About the what, dear? I didn't hear that.
The self-therapy?
Oh, step therapy. Oh, that was a bill that we got passed in Georgia. So it allows, what it does is that it helps allow the insurance companies to listen to what your doctor wants you to have, instead of giving you a lesser drug first that you have to take and fail on before you get the drug that your doctor's asking for. And it was a very big deal. It's been across the country that all the states have been trying to pass step therapy legislation. So when we passed it in Georgia, it was quite an accomplishment here to be able to try to put our physicians back in control with us of our treatment. I am a staunch advocate of that. And that is why I have medical organizations, the Black Nurses Association, the Medical Association of Georgia, the American College of Rheumatology. I have the ophthalmology and the surgeons groups on our coalition, because it's very important for us to be supporting the doctors so that they can take care of us the way they know they should. Because right now what's happening, which why I'm interested in tomorrow night's collaborative seminar that you guys are having. Right now, the insurance companies are practicing medicine, not the physicians. So we need to turn that around. We need to get the doctors being able to give us the medications that they know we need and the treatments that we need, and not having the insurance carriers make those decisions.
Yes, most definitely. I told my doctor that a couple of days ago. I don't want to just be test trying medication they don't know about yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your relationship with your physician has to be primary. And I try to work with we have quite a few legislators who realize that under the dome. They put patients first. And I don't care what side of the aisle they're on. Those are the people I'm going to work with.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you found, speaking about step therapy just a little bit, have you found that insurance companies have now decided to just exclude certain types of therapies ever since that bill was passed into law?
What we're finding and we are working on a special case with this under the radar right now, but we are finding gross violations of our step therapy legislation in every arena, in every insurance company. And we're trying to build a case. So if any of your members have had a situation happen where they've been denied their drug that the doctor wanted to give them, and it is on formulary, but they will not give them that tier of drug, they need to contact me with their story, because you know, there's another piece that ARXC is very involved in. We're trying to develop a story bank of all stories of patients, because that is our arsenal. When we go under the dome and we need to try to get legislation passed that's going to help all of you, it's those stories that we tell them. And we do it like a story card with your photo and then your story underneath it, because those stories is what moves our legislators. They're powerful.
Well, sign me up, definitely.
Oh yeah, I already got your story. I've already got it ready for our story card for this.
I have more and more stories to tell.
I need stories from everybody. If you could put out an alert to your membership to just have them send their stories with a headshot. That's all I need. I can take it from there and it'll be safe. You know, I'm a registered nurse specialist by trade, so I'm very familiar with the HIPAA laws. And I would let you know, I would let Terry know, Christopher know, if we ever wanted to use your story. And many times, you know, our press and media asks us for patients. Do you have a patient related to the issue? And we have to have a patient related to the issue, otherwise they won't do the story. So you could help us a great deal here in Georgia if you could send on, and Terry knows she's the Lupus Foundation is part of our coalition. So she knows that we take good care of everything. On our board, I have a lawyer and a magistrate judge. So we're very careful about protecting people.
And I wanted to mention one thing in reference to that. We're going to be doing a ambassador training in August, where we're actually going to train people to go out and talk about, to tell their story professionally. We're going to give them a headshot and train them so that they can go out into the community and really bring awareness. And what we're trying to do is just to reach all the corners of Georgia. So we're trying to get stories from, you know, from Alto, Georgia, north down to, you know, Savannah,
down to Perry, Georgia in the south.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And make sure,
especially our communities where it's not urban and they don't have the hospitals and the connection to the medical community that we have.
Right, right. Yet they still have the high prevalence. So
Yes.
it's really important to
Yes.
get into those communities, and it's important for us to get spokespeople from those communities so
Yes.
they can talk about what their needs are there, their unique needs.
Right.
No, we're not speaking for them; they're speaking for themselves.
Exactly. And then when we have to go to a legislator, there might be a legislator that's on a committee who is blocking or doesn't want to vote for one of our bills. But if we bring that constituent or bring their story, this person lives where you live, and this is what they're going through because we haven't passed this legislation. That's powerful. That's going to move them. It's definitely going to move them. You know, our funding, we spend a lot of our funding money on digital campaigns. I have a PR company that puts our digital campaigns. We have over 3,000 people now on that email list. And we do it on Facebook, we do it on Google. And, you know, that's where we're reaching into the corners of Georgia that most people ignore, but it's so prevalent for us, especially with a disease like, you know, lupus. Lupus is the great masquerader. You know, people who are not in a major urban city, they could spend years not being diagnosed with this disease until it finally affects their organs, and they're half dead when they could have been diagnosed if they had been here in Atlanta by the second visit.
Mhm.
So, you know, it's not the fault per se of the medical community. It's the fault that we don't put the resources where people need it
Right.
the most. And, you know, our opinion is that we shouldn't have to fight this hard to be well.
Yeah.
And to live. Nobody should have to go through this. I'm constantly telling our legislators, you ask too much of patients without giving enough back. And we feel very strongly about that.
Very true.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Terry, can you put the slide back up?
I can.
Thank you.
I think.
Dorothy, I know you mentioned the rebate argument or the rebate bill. Can you go in just a little bit and tell everyone a little bit about what that's about?
Okay. It's one of the important issues that we'll be facing again, and we'll be facing this for a long time. And the reason is that, and most people might not be aware of this, when your doctor orders a prescription drug, and for us, it's usually not a generic, okay? If this is a drug that's helping our lupus, it's going to be a second, third, fourth tier drug. What happens is that the insurance carrier decides whether or not that drug will be on their formulary. Well, they make that decision based upon the deal that they make with the manufacturer of the drug. In between the manufacturer of the drug and the insurance company are people that the insurance company hires that are called pharmacy benefit managers. Pharmacy benefit managers also get paid by the insurance company. They take a commission on the price settled by the company and the manufacturer. Plus, many times they own the pharmacy or they own the mail order pharmacy. So you have a group of people, and I just found out the other day being on a national seminar, and now they're calling themselves GPOs. But they're PBMs. That's what they are. Okay. And they make these decisions as to whether you get the drug or not. Everybody thinks it's pharma. It's not pharma. By the time it's getting to your doctor deciding if you need the drug and putting that request into the insurer, pharma is long gone out of the picture. It is not pharma. Pharma already made the deal with that insurer to put that drug on formulary. So what happens in a rebate? So take, for instance, Pfizer. Pfizer gives a rebate for a drug. And if you take this drug, it's like a discount. So you can call the manufacturer and they'll give you a discount for maybe 6 months, a year to be able to get the drug because they know they're very expensive and you probably can't afford it. What happens is that the PBMs, the middleman, is taking the money that should be going to the patient at the point of sale, at the pharmacy counter, or when that drug hits your doorway. So what we're trying to do is have more oversight with the PBMs. Let's pull away the veils. Let's be more transparent. But no matter how we do it, we want that money going back to the patients because the manufacturer of the drug intended and created rebates to help ease the financial burden that patients have in receiving specialty drugs. We're not going to get rid of PBMs now that we have them, but we certainly can make them accountable. And we certainly can stop them from taking money that should be going to patients to alleviate this financial burden of injectables, just more expensive specialty drugs that we all have to take. And opening up the formularies so that more insurance companies have more drugs on their formularies. So it came down to our fight is with the PBMs. And the PBMs this time decided to come behind us, which they do every time I have a bill. And they convinced leadership this time that there's enough there were 2 other PBM bills that went through again. And we had great success with the step therapy, which is really all oversight of PBMs, that they were not going to do another PBM bill. So we'll come back next time and we'll make sure it gets done. We won't stop until it gets done.
Well, and that certainly sounds like something that the Lupus Foundation and our constituents could get behind next year. So
yes, I would love that. That would be
absolutely.
Would be just wonderful.
Absolutely.
The more people that step up and say, yes, this is hurting me.
Yeah.
And that's why we have the doctors, because they're the ones that say, I'm not able to prescribe what I need to prescribe for my patients because of this. So how do you expect me? And that's why in my opening statement, I said, the problem is that everybody else thinks they can practice medicine without a license. And in the end, the patients are not getting what they need.
Yeah. That's so true. That is so true.
Very, very true. And I think our last time right before COVID, we were down at the Capitol and PBM, there was a PBM bill that was in discussion at the time, but it seems like PBMs are becoming more and more powerful over time. Between 2019, I guess it was, and now,
yeah.
I think it's affecting all of us.
We did pass 2 PBM bills for oversight, and they were outraged by it. But Representative David Knight has done a wonderful job. And our other partner is the Georgia Pharmacy Association. So we partnered with them and we got Representative David Knight to do a really thorough oversight bill, but it still doesn't stop them in the specialty tier community. And that's where lupus drugs go. Lupus drugs are more in that specialty. So they're above your generics, in other words. They're beyond the brand name. They're specific drugs for these types of autoimmune diseases.
Right. Certainly. I'm sure all of us on this call probably have had some sort of disagreement with the PBM or some sort of interaction with PBM in the past. And certainly that's something, hopefully maybe we'll talk about it in tomorrow's call with the collaborative and learn a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited about hearing what they have to say. I know all about Kaiser Permanente. That's a different situation because they're like an HMO. You have to go through their doctors. So that's pretty tailored. But it'll be interesting to see what Anthem and United Healthcare, because we've taken them to the carpet many times under the dome. And
Yeah.
one of our representatives she is the chairman of the Health and Human Services Committee on the representative side. She has taken them many times to the well because of the antics that they have done. And she is fearless about this. But yeah, they need to be called out. The more we call them out, even on Facebook, even on, other platforms, is telling our story. And it's just a matter of, it's a barrier to my care. I can't get the care I need because this is happening to me.
Yes.
The more stories we have like that, the more influence we have.
Right,
Yes.
right. But you stated that exactly right. That's the kind of story that we need. I can't get the care I need because of the barriers placed in front of me. And I mean,
Right.
if we state it that simple, that's what we're looking for, I think we'd even get more stories. So that's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Agreed.
specifics are important, but I like to do like Christopher I saw did on his bio too. We like to put all the specifics in like 1 or 2 sentences. That's enough. We had the stroke, we had this, we had kidney, we had that. I mean, that's it. That's enough. It's the everyday living with the disease that the healthy, normal person does not understand. They don't understand when we open our eyes every morning that we don't know what kind of day we're going to have. They don't understand the anticipation of going into the next doctor visit and not knowing what's going to happen with our treatment plan. And on top of that, not having the affordable access to the medications and treatments we need is just unconscionable.
Yes.
it truly is. It truly is unconscionable. That's the correct word.
That's
Well,
true.
Dorothy, I want to really, really thank you for being on here as part of our advocacy series today. You're truly, truly amazing woman, and I'm glad to now finally know you. And I'm sure we all have the
Yes.
same sentiment. And we'd love for you to come back and talk to us a little bit more, because I think we could sit
Anytime.
here for hours and hours and listen to you.
Yes.
learn.
Yeah, the
So,
next time I come, make sure you think about some really hard questions for me, really
Okay.
hard situations.
Mhm.
Well, I
Me
think we're
to,
gonna get some. I think we're gonna get some follow up because I've had a couple people who have texted me saying that they couldn't make it tonight. So I've got it recorded. So they already
That's
want
great.
they already want the recording. So there's already people calling for.
Put it on your website
Yep, I'm
so
gonna
that
put it on
everybody can, so that
yes.
everybody can hear it.
and that's what I'll do. As soon as I get this recording, I will put it on the website. People can hear it. It will also be on Facebook. And take a good hard look at the material that was
Yes.
presented tonight and ask the hard questions. That's what we have to do. We're not going to affect change if we avoid the hard questions, right?
Right,
Mhm.
right.
Very true.
And the hard people who don't
Yes.
want to help us.
Yes.
We gotta be able to be in front of them and be
Mhm.
seen and let them know we're not quitting just because you don't like what we want to do.
I know that's right.
Yeah, so we
Great.
have to be strong that way. The other thing, for some people, it's not easy for them to sit down and write. I've had a lot of patients that I brought under the dome or that we've posted. They could do a little video on their phone
Right.
and tell their story and then
Mhm.
send that on to us. That'll be part of the story bank also.
Mhm.
And then if we need to write it up, we can write it up from just listening to their and seeing their video. So audio or video, that's another way of just getting your story out. And when we have these stories banked, we're going to be putting them out there in social media. We're going to be broadcasting them so that the healthy people and the rest of the population understands how hard it is to live with a chronic illness every day.
Yes. So Terry, can you flip over to the other two
I
screens
certainly
real
can.
quick? So
There
as
you
a
go.
here we go. As a part of our summer series, we do have another presentation coming in June, the date to be determined, where we'll be talking about advocating 365 days a year.
Mhm.
And then as a part of our Lupus Advocacy University series, in July, we're talking about You Are the Key to a Better Life. And then finally, in August, we are encouraging everyone to meet with their elected officials while our U.S. Congress, as well as U.S. Senate, are in the state for their summer sessions, as well as our other elected officials will be hopefully campaigning for office. This is a great opportunity in August for you to meet one-on-one with some of your elected officials. In addition to that, next month, actually in a few weeks, we have the National Lupus National Lupus Policy Summit, which will be digital this year, and you can find more information about that at lupusga.org. Again, I want to thank you for being with us this evening. There are the dates, June 26th through June 28th. I wanted to thank you all for being on this call this evening. Thank you to Dorothy Leon Glaser, and I want to also thank my co-chair, Lita McLean, and of course, Terry Iman for being on tonight. And I hope everyone has a nice, safe evening and a good rest of your week.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.